Have you ever found yourself sitting down with a translation of, like, a truly ancient text?
Oh, like the really old stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it's one of the great epics of India, like the Ramayana, or really any global mythology.
Right. The Sumerian king list is a great example of that, or the ancient dynasties of Egypt.
Yes. You're reading those and you are just completely absorbed in the world building.
It's
It
fascinating.
really is. You're reading about these grand, sweeping geopolitical battles and intricate royal court politics.
And the deeply sophisticated philosophies they had.
Exactly. And the text feels grounded. It feels real to you.
Right, you're right there with them.
But then, out of nowhere, the author describes a great king or like a fierce warrior. They just casually mention that this person is 60,000 years old.
Right. And you just stop?
You hit a total wall. You
You
stop reading, you probably roll your eyes, and you just tell yourself, okay, sure, 60,000 years. It's just a
Right.
metaphor.
Yeah, you assume it's poetic exaggeration just to make this ancient ruler sound, incredibly important.
We all do it. I mean, our modern, highly empirical brains simply cannot process a number like that as a biological fact.
No, of course not.
So we instantly categorize the entire text as mythological fiction.
Which is such a natural reaction, but, well, what if we are the ones making the error?
Right. What if that absurd, impossibly large number was actually an exact, scientifically sound mathematical calculation?
And we have just completely forgotten how to read the formula.
Which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
That framing completely upends how you and I interface with antiquity.
It really does. Because we are so profoundly accustomed to viewing human history exclusively through the lens of our current immediate reality.
Right. We take our modern 365-day calendar.
Our modern biological aging process and our modern configuration of the night sky, and we just aggressively project them backward onto the past.
And when the ancient records don't align perfectly with our 21st century sky, we assume the ancient observers were primitive.
Or prone to fantasy, or, just making things up for dramatic effect.
We just slap the label myth on it and move on.
Exactly. We call it myth. But the far more compelling reality, and the one we are diving into today, is that these ancient authors were actually rigorous astronomers.
Which is the core of our mission for this deep dive. We are exploring a truly mind-bending document today.
It really is a paradigm shifter.
It unpacks a framework known as the Yugantar Master Thesis.
Oh, right.
And this source material, it essentially claims to have reverse-engineered the exact cryptographic key that we lost.
Yeah, it takes those impossibly long lifespans of ancient figures from two of the most significant texts in human history.
The Ramayana and the Mahabharata, right?
Right. And it proves that these ages are not typos.
They aren't poetic fantasies.
No, they are precise, mathematically sound astronomical records of a solar system that is constantly shifting and changing its shape.
Okay, so that is a massive claim.
It's huge. The core premise requires you to basically abandon the idea that our solar system is a static, unchanging clock.
Right, because we just assume the Earth goes around the sun exactly the same way it did a million years ago.
Exactly, but we have to start viewing orbital mechanics as a dynamic, shifting mechanism over vast, vast epochs of time.
The Yugantar model proposes that to understand human history, we have to track the shrinking orbits of the planets.
Yes, and the changing velocity of the moon.
And there's this hidden lunar-solar ratio that the source material talks about.
That ratio is everything. It acts as the ultimate decoder ring.
So once you apply that ancient mathematical framework to these texts, the veil of mythology just instantly falls away.
It does. You find yourself staring at pure observational science.
It's incredible. But before we can actually take that decoder ring and start translating the specific ages of historical figures, we need to rebuild our foundational understanding of how ancient civilizations even measured time.
Because it wasn't just a calendar on the wall for them.
No, not at all. According to the Yugantar thesis, they had a dual clock system.
Right. Operating on a philosophy that is fundamentally different from how you and I track our ages today.
They divided time into two distinct categories, right? Prani and Jeev.
Yes, Prani and Jeev. And that dual clock system is arguably much more comprehensive than our modern reliance on just the solar year.
How so? Like, break that down for the listener.
Well, the fundamental division between Prani and Jeev represents the ancient understanding that a living being is not just a single physical entity.
Right, it's a composite.
Exactly, a composite of matter and consciousness. So Prani refers exclusively to the biological age.
The physical, flesh and blood body.
Yes. And the age of the Prana was always, without exception, measured in solar years.
Which, I mean, that makes intuitive sense, biologically speaking.
It totally does. The sun governs the physical world.
It drives the seasons, it dictates the growth cycles of crops.
It regulates the circadian rhythms of our endocrine systems.
Yeah, it literally dictates the physical aging and replication of our cells. So tracking the physical machine of the human body with a solar calendar, which we still do today, is a purely biological metric.
Precisely. Your physical decay and growth are tied to the Earth's physical orbit around the sun.
But the ancient astronomers recognized that human existence isn't just cellular replication.
Right. There is also the Jeev.
The Jeev, which is the spiritual age, right?
Yes, the spiritual age, the subtle consciousness, or, what some might call the internal psychological journey of the individual.
And this timeline was deliberately decoupled from the sun,
Entirely. The Jeev was measured exclusively in lunar years.
based strictly on the moon's cycles and its transit through the background stars.
Right.
Tying consciousness to the moon is a trope we see across almost every ancient culture, though, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The moon has always been associated with the mind.
The emotional state, the subtle internal tides of human behavior.
Exactly. So they established a solar calendar to track the wear and tear on the body, and a completely separate lunar calendar to track the maturation of the spirit.
And that separation is critical because the Yugantar model hinges on the fact that the relationship between the sun and the moon is not a fixed constant.
No, it fluctuates. And this is where the term Yugantar becomes really important.
Right, let's define that. Yuga translates to an epoch.
Yes, a massive geological or cosmic era. And Yugantar refers to the transition between these epochs.
So the central astrophysical claim of the source material is that as these epochs transition, the spatial distances between celestial bodies in our solar system fundamentally change.
The physical orbits of the planets actually shrink.
The solar system is actively contracting. Now, I want to visualize this correctly for the listener, because when I first read this, my mind went straight to a simple analogy.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine a racetrack. If a planet is a car on a 10-mile track, it takes a certain amount of time to complete a lap. But if the track suddenly shrinks to a 5-mile loop, the lap time gets cut in half.
That analogy definitely sets the stage, but the physics of a contracting solar system are actually much more dynamic than just a simple change in distance.
Oh, really? How so?
We have to factor in Kepler's laws of planetary motion.
Ah, okay. Bring on the physics.
Specifically his third law, which the Yugantar model heavily leans on. Kepler proved that the square of a planet's orbital period is proportional to the cube of the semi-major axis of its orbit.
Okay, that's a lot of math jargon. In plain English, what does that mean for our race car?
In plain English, when an orbit shrinks, the planet doesn't just have less distance to travel. The gravitational dynamics actually force the planet to move faster.
Ah, so the car on the shrinking racetrack isn't just driving a shorter route.
No, the engine is actually being forced to accelerate because the track is tighter.
Because the gravitational pull of the sun is stronger at a closer distance.
Exactly, which means the planet has to travel at a higher orbital velocity just to avoid falling into the sun.
That makes total sense. So when the yugas change and the orbits contract, the length of a solar year changes drastically due to both the shorter distance and the increased velocity.
Yes, and simultaneously, the gravitational interplay between the Earth and the moon shifts.
Which alters the length of a lunar year as well.
Precisely, because both the biological clock and the spiritual clock are shifting at different rates depending on the era.
So the ancient astronomers needed a master formula to translate between the two.
They needed a dynamic algorithm, not a static calendar.
They needed a mathematical bridge to connect the biological solar clock and the spiritual lunar clock for any given epoch.
And the source material provides the exact master equation they used.
And on paper, it looks incredibly simple.
It really does. It's just SY equals X times LY.
Solar years equals X multiplied by lunar years.
The entire secret of decoding ancient texts lives inside that single variable X.
So X is the great translate.
It is. In the ancient astronomical framework, X represents the exact amount of time it takes the moon to transit across a single specific nakshatra.
Okay, for those who might not be steeped in Vedic astronomy, we should probably define what a nakshatra actually is.
That's a good idea.
Because they didn't have telescopes. They were mapping this entirely with the naked eye.
Right. So a nakshatra is a lunar mansion or a specific sector along the ecliptic plane.
Like a slice of the sky.
Exactly. If you imagine the night sky, specifically the path the moon travels, as a giant pie.
Okay, I'm picturing the pie.
Ancient Indian astronomers divided that pie into 27, or more mathematically precisely, 27.32 distinct slices.
And these slices correspond to specific constellations or prominent star clusters that act as background markers, right?
Yes, they are fixed points of reference. So when we talk about our variable x, we are asking a very specific observational question.
How many days does it take for the moon to physically move through just one of those 27.32 celestial slices?
That's it. That is the variable.
So the ancient formula basically works like this. To find someone's true biological age in solar years, you take their spiritual age.
Which is often the number written in the biographical sections of these epic poems.
Right, and you multiply that spiritual age by the number of days it took the moon to cross one constellation during the specific era in which that person lived.
That is the bridge. And it is vital to understand that reading these ancient texts without applying this specific mathematical bridge is a fundamental error in data interpretation.
It's like, okay, think about it like finding an ancient thermometer in the desert that reads 40 degrees.
Okay, I like this.
If you firmly believe the instrument is calibrated in Fahrenheit, you're going to think the climate was freezing.
You'd think they were in an ice age.
Exactly. You might write a whole historical paper on the ancient ice age of this region.
Right.
But if you realize the instrument was actually calibrated in Celsius, you suddenly understand that the environment was a blistering 104 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's a perfect analogy. The data on the instrument wasn't wrong.
The number 40 was perfectly accurate.
So the failure was entirely on the modern reader who applied the wrong unit of measurement.
Exactly. If you read an ancient text, see a massive number for a lifespan, and automatically apply a modern 365-day biological solar year to it.
You will inevitably conclude that the text is absurd mythology.
But the error isn't in the primary source.
No, the error is the reader's failure to apply the correct orbital conversion ratio for the epoch in question.
Let's take this master formula out of the theoretical realm, though.
Good idea. Let's see how it actually behaves when we apply it to the data.
Our sources move us chronologically back to a very specific, highly documented era, right? The Treta Yuga.
Yes, the Treta Yuga. This is the cosmological epoch in which the Ramayana takes place.
And according to the Yugantar astrophysical model, if you were standing on Earth during the Treta Yuga, the reality of the sky above you would have been staggeringly different than it is today.
It would be almost unrecognizable to a modern astronomer.
How so? Paint that picture for us.
Well, the Yugantar model, calculating backward through the epochs using those Keplerian principles we discussed, lays out some astonishing baseline data for the Treta Yuga.
Okay, hit me with the data.
During this era, the entire solar system was physically wider. The Earth was situated significantly further away from the sun.
To give the listener a sense of scale, how much further out into space are we talking?
Today, the Earth sits at an average distance of 1 astronomical unit, or 1 AU, from the sun. That is our modern baseline.
Right.
But in the Treta Yuga, the mathematical models suggest Earth was orbiting at roughly 1.57 AU.
1.57 AU. That is a massive orbital shift.
It is a huge difference.
In our current solar system, 1.57 AU puts you almost exactly out where Mars is orbiting right now.
Yes, out near the Martian orbit.
If Earth was that far out, the implications for timekeeping are immense because of that wider, longer track and the slower orbital velocity dictated by being further from the sun's gravity well.
It took vastly longer for the Earth to complete a single journey around the sun.
Our sources indicate that one biological solar year in the Treta Yuga took exactly 720 days.
A single year was practically double the length of our current year.
Which is just wild to try and comprehend living through.
And this wasn't just a mathematical curiosity, you know. It fundamentally dictated the rhythm of biological life and agriculture.
Right, they had to live according to that clock.
The ancient calendars from this era reflect this reality completely. They didn't divide a year into 12 months.
What'd they do instead?
A 720-day year was divided into 24 distinct solar months.
24 months.
And rather than the quick transition of 4 seasons we experience, the texts describe 6 distinct, highly drawn-out seasons.
Just imagine the psychological and biological impact of that.
It would be profound.
A single season would last roughly 120 days. You would be living in an extended, deeply entrenched rhythm of nature.
A winter wouldn't just be a brief cold snap.
No, it would be a third of a modern year. The entire biosphere would have been adapted to these prolonged cycles.
Absolutely. But as profound as the Earth's orbit was, The behavior of the moon during the Trita Yuga was equally radical.
Oh, right. Because everything shifted.
The moon's sidereal motion, its observable movement against the background of the fixed stars, was incredibly sluggish compared to our modern night sky.
We have to look back at our variable X, right?
Yes. The time it takes the moon to cross one single nakshatra.
Today, if you go out and track the moon, it takes roughly one single day to transit across a constellation slice.
Roughly one day, yes. But in the Trita Yuga, due to the expanded planetary orbits and the differing gravitational tension between the distant sun, the Earth, and the moon.
It took the moon a massive 11 days to cross just one nakshatra.
11 days.
11 days. Picture standing in ancient Ayodhya, looking up at the night sky. The moon is just hovering, locked in the exact same constellation for over a week and a half before it finally drifts into the next sector of the sky.
It's a completely different visual and spiritual experience of the cosmos.
And this 11-day transit time is where the mathematical brilliance of the Yugantar thesis really starts to shine.
It really does, because if we know it takes 11 days to cross one nakshatra, we can calculate the exact length of a lunar year for the Trita Yuga.
The math practically does itself once you have the variables.
Exactly. We established earlier that there are roughly 27.32 nakshatras mapping the complete orbital path, right?
Right, so we take those 27.32 nakshatras and we multiply them by our x variable for the Trita Yuga.
Which is 11 days.
And that gives us 300.52 days.
Which means one complete lunar cycle, one revolution of the moon through all the constellations took exactly 300.52 days.
Okay, so a single cycle is about 300 days.
Right. Now, in ancient timekeeping, a formal lunar year was calculated based on 12 of these complete lunar cycles.
Oh, I see. So if you multiply 300.52 days by 12 cycles, you get the length of the Jiva year.
Yes, which comes out to approximately 3,606 days.
So a single lunar year one standardized unit of spiritual time was 3,606 days long.
Now we have both halves of the equation for the Trita Yuga.
We have the biological solar year, which was 720 days.
And we have the spiritual lunar year, which was 3,606 days.
To find the conversion ratio, we just divide the lunar year by the solar year, right?
Exactly. 3,606 divided by 720.
And that calculation yields 5.008.
For all practical historical calendrical purposes, it is a perfect 5-to-1 ratio.
A 5-to-1 ratio.
This is the definitive decoder ring for the entire Trita Yuga epoch.
It establishes a firm mathematical rule. One lunar year, the recorded Jiva age, is mathematically equivalent to 5 solar years, the biological age. Okay, I have to stop here and offer some serious pushback.
I figured you would.
Because I am looking at this math, and it is undeniably elegant.
It is very tidy.
But a skeptic is going to look at this and say, wait a minute. How do we know modern researchers aren't just selectively mining data to find a convenient fraction?
That's a fair question.
Are we just reverse engineering a 5-to-1 ratio because it conveniently makes mythical ages sound like realistic modern human ages?
It's very easy to build a theoretical astrophysical model on a whiteboard.
Exactly. But if this 5-to-1 decoder ring is a genuine historical artifact, it has to function flawlessly when applied to the actual primary source material.
We have to test it against the raw verses of the Ramayana.
Right. That is the ultimate crucible for this theory.
And if the ancient authors were truly coding astronomical reality into their texts, the 5-to-1 ratio shouldn't just work on a whiteboard.
It should resolve the narrative contradictions within the epic itself.
And when we apply it to the Valmiki Ramayana, the results are startlingly precise.
Okay, let's test it on the most central figures of the epic, Lord Rama and Mother Sita.
We can look at one of the most highly cited verses regarding their biography.
Where is that found?
In the Aranya-kanda, which translates to the Book of the Forest, chronicling their time in exile.
Okay.
There is a specific sarga, or chapter, where Mother Sita is speaking directly to Ravana.
Sarga 47, Shloka 10, right?
Yes. In that verse, she is recounting the history of their banishment from the royal kingdom of Ayodhya.
And the text explicitly records her stating their exact ages at the moment the exile began.
She states clearly that Lord Rama was 25 and she was 18.
25 and 18. Now, if I am a modern historian reading that text without the Yugantar decoder ring, I'm thinking, okay, 25 and 18, I don't need a cryptographic key for that.
Right, they look like perfectly normal, mathematically unremarkable human ages.
A skeptic would argue that this verse proves the texts were writing in normal biological years all along.
On the surface, it appears completely normal to a modern reader, but you have to contextualize those numbers within the intense narrative architecture of the Ramayana.
Because at 25 and 18, according to the plot of the epic, These two figures already possessed profound multi-generational wisdom.
Right. Lord Rama had mastered incredibly complex, divinely engineered martial arts and weaponry.
They both exhibited deep diplomatic acumen and a level of spiritual maturity and stoicism that typically takes a biological lifetime to cultivate.
The narrative dissonance is massive.
It really is. If we assume they were literally 25 and 18 biological years old as we measure them today, their feats are frankly absurd.
It would be like sending a college sophomore and a high school senior out to navigate a highly lethal, geopolitically charged exile in a demon-infested wilderness.
All while demonstrating the tactical brilliance of a seasoned five-star general.
The maturity level just doesn't match the stated biological age.
Exactly. The narrative implies deep seasoning.
And the Yugantar thesis argues that when ancient biographical texts explicitly state a character's age during a narrative event, they are providing the Jeev age.
They are giving you the lunar years, the measure of their spiritual and psychological journey.
So we take the 5-to-1 decoder ring and we turn the key.
Let's do the math. If the text says Lord Rama was 25 lunar years old at the time of exile, we multiply that by our Trita-Yuga ratio of 5.
25 times 5 equals 125 solar years.
125. His biological body had been alive for 125 of those long 720-day years.
And we do the exact same for Mother Sita.
The text records her G's age as 18.
18 lunar years multiplied by 5 gives us exactly 90 solar years.
Biologically, she was a 9-year-old woman.
That completely retextures the entire epic.
It really does. You no longer have impulsive teenagers wandering into the forest.
Oh, you have mature, profoundly seasoned individuals who have lived long, rich biological lives before the central conflict even begins.
They possess a century of lived experience, political observation, and physical conditioning.
The 5-to-1 ratio doesn't just make the math work. It actually grounds the narrative capabilities of the characters in biological reality.
It resolves the narrative dissonance entirely.
It does. But, a skeptic might still argue that multiplying 25 by 5 is just a convenient parlor trick.
Right, you just picked a small number and made it bigger.
Exactly. To truly validate the formula, we have to look at the other extreme of the data set.
We have to look at the numbers that cause people to roll their eyes in the first place.
Right, the trope of the immortal king.
Our sources point us to the Balakanda, the Book of Childhood, which details the life of Rama's father, King Dasharatha.
And the text states unequivocally that King Dasharatha lived for 60,000 solar years.
60,000. I mean, it is a number so massive, it completely breaks the modern brain.
It is an impossible biological metric.
But notice the specific language the text uses, right?
Yes. For biographical ages during a narrative, like Rama at 25, the text uses lunar years.
The Jeeves?
But when recording dynastic durations, complete lifespans, or the total length of a king's reign, the ancient historians always recorded those grand totals in solar years.
Which is the ultimate measure of physical time on Earth.
Exactly.
And this directly addresses the pushback I had earlier about randomly choosing to multiply or divide.
We aren't just picking the math operation that suits us. The unit of measurement is dictated by the context of the verse.
Because the text explicitly gives Dasharatha's total lifespan as 60,000 solar years, we have to run the master formula in reverse to find his spiritual age, his Jeev.
We have to see if it aligns with the biological limits of the era.
So instead of multiplying by 5, we have to divide by 5.
Let's run that calculation. 60,000 solar years divided by the Trita-Yuga ratio of 5.
60,000 divided by 5 yields exactly 12,000 lunar years.
Precisely 12,000.
And the reason that specific number is a monumental breakthrough is because 12,000 lunar years is heavily documented across various Vedic texts as the established absolute maximum human biological lifespan limit for the Treta-Yuga epoch.
The 60,000 figure was never a random, boastful exaggeration invented by a poet.
No, it was an exact mathematical ceiling that sits flawlessly within the established astronomical and biological framework of that specific cosmological era.
The implications of this are staggering.
They really are. It's like, okay, think of it like a computer file.
A computer file.
Yeah, it's like the Ramayana is a zip-compressed computer file.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
If you just look at the raw file size, it seems impossibly huge. You look at the raw data of the text without the formula, it reads 60,000, and your modern mind rejects it as an oversized, corrupted file.
Right. It won't open properly in your modern system.
Exactly. But once you apply the right extraction software, this 5-to-1 astronomical ratio derived directly from the 11-day orbital transit of the moon.
Data decompresses.
all the data unpacks into perfectly logical, historically consistent human lifespans.
That's a brilliant way to conceptualize it. And our sources highlight one more piece of evidence from the Ramayana that proves, without a doubt, that the authors were highly conscious of this mathematical encoding.
Oh, this part blew my mind. It involves the total duration of Lord Rama's reign as king.
This is perhaps the most elegant proof in the entire thesis.
Both the Balakanda and the concluding Uttarakanda discuss the duration of Rama's golden age of rule.
And they state that his reign lasted for 11,000 solar years.
But what is truly fascinating, and what reveals the hand of the astronomer behind the poet, is how the text constructs that number.
Yes, the Sanskrit doesn't just provide a single word for 11,000.
It specifically and deliberately writes the number as a localized equation, 10,000 plus 1,000.
Which is such an oddly specific grammatical choice.
It really is. If I want to tell you I have $11,000, I don't say I have 10,000 plus $1,000.
Yeah.
I just give you the total.
Right. Why would the ancient author fracture the number like that?
To understand why, we have to revisit the overarching master formula that governs all of this.
SY equals X times LY.
Solar years equals the moon's transit time multiplied by lunar years.
Okay, let's plug the data from the text into the formula.
The text states his reign was a total of 11,000 solar years.
And we know that for the Treta Yuga, our variable X, the transit time of the moon across a nakshatra, was exactly 11 days.
So the equation is 11,000 equals 11 times the lunar years.
To solve for the lunar years, we divide 11,000 by 11.
Which leaves us with exactly 1,000.
Exactly 1,000 lunar cycles. His reign was biologically 11,000 solar years, but spiritually it was exactly 1,000 lunar years.
And that is why the poet Valmiki deliberately fractured the number in the verse.
By writing it as 10,000 plus 1,000, Valmiki is explicitly highlighting the 1,000 figure for the reader.
He is leaving the mathematical proof right there in the syntax of the epic.
He is basically showing his work in the margins of the poem.
It's incredible. He is telling future generations, look at this isolated number, 1,000. Now look at the implied multiplier, 11. You do the math.
It is a deliberate, highly conscious mathematical choice.
It proves they weren't just writing flowery praises. They were embedding highly advanced planetary data logs directly into the meter of their poetry.
It forces a complete reevaluation of the intellectual capacity of these ancient civilizations.
We are looking at a society that possessed a level of astronomical integration that modern science is only just now beginning to reverse engineer and appreciate.
So the Yugantar model operates flawlessly for the Treta Yuga. The 5-to-1 ratio decodes the Ramayana perfectly.
But the entire premise of the thesis is that the solar system is not static, right? It is contracting.
Yes, so a true scientific model must be able to adapt to new data.
Our source material leaps forward in time, crossing the threshold of epochs to test the model on the next great era.
The Dvapara Yuga.
This is the timeline of the Mahabharata.
Right.
When we leave the Ramayana behind and enter the Mahabharata, what exactly happens to the celestial mechanics of our solar system?
The sky fundamentally changes. By the time human history reaches the late Dvapara Yuga, the Yugantar model dictates that the solar system had contracted significantly.
The vast, expansive orbits of the Treta Yuga had tightened,
The physical distances between the planetary bodies were reduced.
meaning the Earth is no longer floating out at 1.57 AU out by Mars.
No, the gravitational tightening of the epoch has pulled the Earth significantly closer to the Sun.
Yes, and Kepler's laws dictate the consequences of that contraction.
Because the Earth's orbit had shrunk in distance and its orbital velocity had necessarily increased, the time it took to complete one biological solar year plummeted.
In the Ramayana, we had a drawn-out 720-day year.
But by the time of the Mahabharata, the model shows that a solar year had been cut exactly in half.
The Earth was now operating on a 360-day year.
A 360-day year. We are suddenly right on the doorstep of our modern biological timekeeping.
A year would feel almost exactly like it does to us today.
But the Earth wasn't the only celestial body affected by the cosmic contraction.
Right. If the Earth pulled closer to the Sun, the gravitational relationship with the Moon must have altered radically as well.
It did. The Moon's orbital velocity shifted dramatically.
With a tighter orbit and an entirely new gravitational interplay, the Moon was moving much faster relative to the background stars.
It was no longer the sluggish celestial body of the previous epoch.
Let's look at our variable x again. In the Ramayana, it took a massive 11 days for the Moon to slowly cross one Nakshatra constellation.
How fast is the Moon moving in the late Dvapara Yuga?
The mathematical models for this contracted era indicate that it took the moon exactly 4.709 days to transit across one nakshatra.
4.709 days. It is moving more than twice as fast through the sky.
Now, this presents a massive hurdle for the entire theory,
It really does.
because if the cosmos literally shrank and the fundamental multiplier dropped from 11 days down to 4.7 days, it means the math of human existence has completely changed.
The beautiful, elegant 5-to-1 decoder ring that unlocked the Ramayana is suddenly entirely useless.
It is completely obsolete.
A new epoch requires an entirely new mathematical calculation based strictly on the updated astronomical reality of the sky.
Which means, if the ancient authors were truly tracking real-time observational astronomy and writing it into their texts, the authors of the Mahabharata should not be using the 5-to-1 ratio.
Their literature must reflect this new 4.709-day reality.
Do our sources point to a specific character or a specific data point in the Mahabharata that proves this new, faster calendar was actively being used by the writers?
They do, and it is arguably the most compelling piece of evidence in the entire Yugantar thesis.
To prove this updated mathematical reality, the researchers focused on one of the most legendary, universally feared warriors of the Mahabharata.
Acharya Drona, commonly known as Dronacharya.
Dronacharya is a fascinating figure. He's the ultimate elder statesman in the battlefield at Kurukshetra.
He is the master who taught advanced weaponry and warfare to both sides of the conflict.
What does the specific text of the Mahabharata record about his age?
The source material directs us to a very famous shloka, which is a specific metric verse or stanza used in ancient Indian poetry to aid in oral memorization.
This particular shloka describes Dronacharya in the heat of battle at Kurukshetra, right?
Yes. The verse paints a vivid, hyper-specific physical portrait of the man.
It explicitly notes that his hair was as white as milk.
And then it boldly states his exact age using a precise Sanskrit compound word.
Vayasashiti Panchaka.
Yes, Vayasashiti Panchaka. Let's break the linguistics of that down.
It is a literal numerical compound.
Ashiti means 80 and Panchaka means 5.
So the verse explicitly defines his age as 80 plus 5, or 85 years old.
Okay, an 85-year-old man.
Again, to a modern reader, an 85-year-old general with milk-white hair commanding troops on a battlefield is biologically plausible.
We don't instantly reject it the way we reject 60,000 years.
But our source material points out that the author of the Mahabharata intentionally built a glaring, almost impossible physical paradox into this very same verse.
Yes, the paradox is the key. The text immediately follows his stated age of 85 by describing his physical output in the battle.
It notes that despite his advanced age and his white hair, Dronacharya was fighting with the terrifying vigor, the unmatched physical speed, and the sheer cellular stamina of a 16-year-old youth.
The text describes him tearing through enemy lines, wielding immensely heavy weapons.
And moving with a fluidity and violence that is simply biologically impossible for a normal 85-year-old human body, no matter how skilled they are.
It's a massive contradiction.
You have the stated biographical age of a frail old man, deeply contrasted with the biological output of an elite, peak-conditioned teenage athlete.
So how does the Yugantar model resolve this paradox? We can't use the 5-to-1 ratio.
We have to apply the new math derived from the contracted Dvapara Yuga cosmos.
Exactly. We return to the unyielding master formula, but we update the variables to match the era.
SY equals X times LY.
Solar years equals the moon's transit time multiplied by lunar years.
We know that biographical ages stated in the narrative are given in Jeev time.
So his lunar years, his LY, is the 85 mentioned in the verse.
And we know from the Keplerian models that in the late Dvapara Yuga, the time it took the moon to cross a Nakshatra Rx variable had sped up to exactly 4.709 days.
So the equation is locked in.
We multiply his lunar age of 85 by the lunar transit time of 4.7009 days.
Let's run the exact numbers. 4.7009 multiplied by 85.
That comes out to exactly 400.265.
For the sake of biological tracking, it isn't even 400.
400. The math unequivocally states that Dronacharya's biological body, his prani age, was 400 solar years old.
400 biological years old. We really need to pause and synthesize what that means for the narrative, because it resolves the paradox flawlessly.
It explains everything about his character. A 400-year lifespan explains his immense, unrivaled generational wisdom.
It explains his absolute mastery of complex tactics. I mean, you have 4 centuries to practice and perfect your art.
But crucially, it also explains his physical capability on the battlefield.
It perfectly aligns the two halves of his description.
If the underlying biological potential of a human being in the Dvapara Yuga allowed for a multi-century lifespan, then at 400 years old, Dronacharya might very well still be in his prime physical fighting condition.
Or, at the very least, he would possess a cellular brutality that allows him to fight with the fury of a youth, even if he has aged enough for his hair to turn white.
The text isn't contradicting itself with hyperbole. It is giving you two highly accurate data points on two different temporal scales.
It provides his spiritual age of 85.
And it describes a physical vitality that corresponds perfectly to a 400-year biological lifespan.
And what is most profound here, zooming out from the specific character, is what this proves about the authors of the texts.
This is irrefutable evidence that this shifting lunar solar calendar wasn't just a one-off trick for the Ramayana.
It was a rigorous, highly disciplined scientific system that was actively updated and consistently tracked across vast gulfs of time.
You have the Ramayana operating flawlessly on an 11-day multiplier.
Thousands of years pass, epochs change, the cosmos shifts, and suddenly you have the Mahabharata operating flawlessly on a 4.709-day multiplier.
The authors weren't guessing.
They weren't just regurgitating old mythological tropes.
They were actively updating their literary algorithms to match the real-time observational data of the sky above them.
They were maintaining a continuous, unbroken scientific record of the solar system, and they wrapped that data in the most durable format they had: epic poetry.
They understood a fundamental truth about human civilization.
Empires will fall, physical libraries will burn, and spoken languages will mutate into unrecognizable dialects.
But the stars, the mathematical laws of orbital mechanics, those are eternal.
If you code your historical knowledge into the mathematical relationship between the sun and the moon, you ensure that any sufficiently advanced future civilization, one that understands astrophysics, can eventually decode your history.
It is the ultimate act of preservation. We touched on it earlier with Valmiki writing 10,000 plus 1,000, but it bears repeating because it fundamentally changes how we must view ancient literature.
The age of a warrior, the white of his hair, the specific vigor of his sword swings. These weren't just adjectives chosen by a poet to make a scene look cool.
They were highly deliberate mathematical variables,
They hid the truth of the physical universe in plain sight.
trusting that eventually someone with the right astronomical key would come along, read the math, and unlock the reality of their world.
And that is precisely the monumental achievement of the Yugantar Thesis. It has finally turned that key.
It has taken the raw data of antiquity and processed it through the immutable laws of astrophysics.
Let's recap this incredible journey for a second, because we have covered massive cosmological and historical ground today.
We started this deep dive in a place of modern arrogance. We laughed at the idea of 60,000-year-old kings.
We assumed our ancient ancestors were just indulging in grand hyperbole.
But through the rigorous application of the Yugantar model, we discovered that these ancient texts actually contain a testable, highly accurate scientific record.
We transitioned from assumption to analysis. By grasping the core philosophical framework, the vital distinction between Prani, the biological solar body, and Jiv, the spiritual lunar consciousness, we established a baseline for how ancient time was categorized.
Right, and then we applied the physics. We tracked the shifting speed of the moon and the contracting orbit of the Earth.
We saw how, in the vastness of the Treta Yuga, the wider orbit created a long 720-day year and a sluggish 11-day lunar transit.
That astronomical reality generated the perfect 5-to-1 decoder ring, which instantly brought the impossible ages of Lord Rama and Mother Sita back down into logical, biological reality.
And then we watched the cosmos contract.
We saw the gravitational tightening of the solar system by the time of the Dvapara Yuga, which dropped the solar year to 360 days and whipped the moon's transit speed up to 4.7009 days.
That completely new mathematical reality perfectly decoded the biological paradox of Acharya Drona fighting like a youth on the battlefield.
By following the math, we unlocked the hidden architecture of human history.
We did. We solved the ancient past.
But as we wrap up, I know you. And I know you don't like to just leave these massive paradigm shifts neatly tied up with a bow, safely relegated to history.
The Yugantar model decodes antiquity, but what does the underlying physics of this model imply about our present or our future?
That is exactly where my mind goes, extrapolating purely from the physical mechanics we've analyzed today.
If we accept the foundational premise of the Yugantar model that planetary orbits in our solar system are not static, but that they steadily shrank from a massive 720-day cycle in the Ramayana era down to a tight 360-day cycle in the Mahabharata era, it implies that we are living in a cosmos that is in a constant macro state of contraction.
A tightening coil. Gravity is slowly winning.
Yes. Now look at our current reality. We sit here today with a 365-day year.
That slight mathematical bump from the 360 days of the Mahabharata to our current 365 might suggest a minor wobble in the orbit, a temporary re-expansion, or perhaps we were just in a different micro-phase of the cycle.
But the undeniable macro trend of the grand epochs was severe contraction.
So, adhering strictly to the logic of the model, it raises a profound, almost unsettling question.
Will the planetary orbits continue to shrink in our future?
Will the gravitational racetrack get even shorter? Will the Earth eventually pull so close to the Sun that a biological year becomes 200 days? 100 days.
According to the mechanics of Kepler's laws and the Yugantar model, it is entirely possible.
And if that happens, think about what it means for the historical record we are generating and leaving behind right now.
Imagine it is thousands of years from now. Our descendants are living on a contracted Earth that zips around the sun in a frantic 150 days.
When their archaeologists dig up our digital servers or our printed records,
Oh, wow. I see exactly the inversion you were setting up here.
when they read our medical journals and they see that humans in the 21st century routinely live to be 80, 90, or 100 biological years old, will they look at those numbers and roll their eyes?
They absolutely will. If their year is 150 days long, a 100-year lifespan to them would mean surviving a staggering number of orbital cycles.
They will look at our records and think our 100-year lifespans are just a ridiculous mythological exaggeration simply because they have lost the mathematical key to decode the wider, slower solar system we happen to live in today.
They will view us exactly how we viewed King Dasharatha.
They will assume we were primitive people making up boastful stories to sound important to our gods, when in reality, we were just living on a fundamentally different cosmic clock.
It is a deeply humbling realization. It forces you to accept that our current, modern experience of time is not the ultimate baseline of reality. It is just one single fleeting frame in a massive, continually shifting cosmic movie.
It completely shatters your chronological arrogance. Thank you for joining us on this mind-bending exploration.
It is rare that we get to take something that has been casually dismissed as pure mythological fantasy for centuries and rigorously rebuild it into a testable mathematical truth.
Keep questioning what you think you know about the past. Keep looking for the hidden variables that govern our universe. And the next time you open an ancient text and see a massive number that makes you want to roll your eyes, maybe reach for a calculator instead.